what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Taylor, and you are listening to episode 49 of the Trauma Dump Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump Podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? This week, we'll be discussing the topic of how we can overcome trauma and move forward towards healing with our very special guest of the week, Katie. You can go follow Katie on all forms of social media. It is at Katie Questions. That is KATIE_QUESTIONS. So please support her for being on this episode. And if you'd like to share on our podcast, we have a Discord. It's anonymous, it's free, it's peer support. And June 30th, coming up, Sunday, June 30th, we are going to be having a live episode where we have anonymous confessions from our Discord. So that episode, listeners from the podcast, so you could be on this episode, will be sharing their experiences anonymously. The purpose of this episode is to provide an outlet for us to share our burdens and get support without risk. So if you'd like to share on the show, please message us in our Discord in the podcast participants channel along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And if you'd like to be a part of the Anonymous Confessions episode, please message us in Anonymous Confessions channel, and you will be featured. I will be reading every single anonymous confession on there. So please join us for that episode. And just a quick reminder before we start, I am not a licensed health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have resources in our description. The topics discussed here are for a mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. Reminder before this episode starts, if you'd like to support our podcast, we have a Patreon where you can get bracelets like the ones on my wrist. These are bracelets made by me, Grace, or you can get a sticker like the one on the back of my computer. The links are in the description, and please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this episode with your friends. We know you got some friends who would like this podcast, so please share it with them, and let's all overcome trauma and heal together. Now, let's get into this episode. Hello, Katie. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, pretty well. Yes. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, thank you for coming on. So today we're going to be talking about healing trauma, all-encompassing healing. But before we get into it, I just have to give the quick disclaimer to all of the audience. I'm not a mental health professional. Neither is Katie. We are just people who have gone through significant trauma and have found ways to recover. And we just want to share our healing journeys with the world. So please do not take our advice as gospel. Just take it as some friends gabbing, and you just want to hear their advice, essentially. So, Katie, what are your pronouns?
She, her, hers.
Awesome. Are you comfortable with discussing your personal experiences?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And to make sure I'm not crossing any of your boundaries and respecting your experiences, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. If you feel uncomfortable with the question or you're like, nah, Grace, I'll skip the question. I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe at all times.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for coming on. So, trauma. Have you been diagnosed with PTSD?
Yes. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2019.
Wow.
And I have other diagnoses as well. That same year, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already been diagnosed ADHD back in the day. So,
dude, I also have ADHD.
Yes, we're fun. What can I say?
So for those of you guys listening that don't know what PTSD is, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. It's usually diagnosed when you have experienced a significant trauma that is continually impacting your day-to-day life and causing issues within your normal functioning. And I just want to unpack, why did you seek out that diagnosis?
There were many things in my life at that time that were really life changing. As I look back, many areas of my life, home, work, parenting, and it just got too much to bear. I needed to visit a psychiatrist at that time.
Mm, yeah, yeah, I get that. I got diagnosed with PTSD after my father was hit by a car. And it was really interesting. My therapist was like, yes, you do have post-traumatic stress disorder from this event, but you have PTSD from your childhood. And I was like, what do you mean? My childhood was normal. My childhood was fine. She's like, that's denial. Your
Exactly.
childhood was not normal and it was not fine. And it's still impacting you to this day. Because she noticed that I had a lot of avoidant tendencies towards my mother and how I just didn't want to interact with her at all. And how my mom was just the point of contact of my dad being in the hospital. And I would talk about all the time. And I was just like, I really don't want to deal with her. And she's like, well, unpack that. Why do you not want to deal with your mother? And I just essentially trauma dumped on my therapist, which is what they're for. And I was like,
Yes.
this is why. She's not nice to me, but I'm doing my best. I'm trying to be a good daughter. And she's like, well, it sounds like she's not a good mom. I'm like, well, she's always tried her best. And she's like, okay, her best isn't good enough. And that was like one of the biggest things that really shook me and started my healing journey, was like, wait, her best isn't good enough? And she was like, it seems like to me that she isn't even trying to be your mother. She isn't even trying to be a mother. She just wants the title and none of the responsibility. It seems like she shoved a lot of that responsibility onto you. So now you have avoidance towards her in general because you don't want any of that responsibility or the weight that comes with it. And I was like, oh my God. Did you ever
Yes.
have those like aha moments with your therapist?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Actually, I've been in and out of therapy since 1996. And that's when my parents divorced about a year prior to that. So it's the typical scenario where the parent brings the child into therapy and then realizes, oh, the parent might be some of the issues. So therapy just kind of falls to the wayside. But I picked it back up 3 years later. I I really had a lot of trauma. I mean, I've had trauma since I was two, dating back. At 2 years old, I was put into almost every activity you could think of. So I've been on stage since I was two, and as well as for dance, but also as a gymnast. And so that led me down an avenue, much like the gymnasts who are coming forward today, where I was sexually molested by my coaches, more than one.
Mm,
And I had repressed that information deep, deep. And even though at 26 years old, much later, my OBGYN told me, um, well, this is a sign of molestation at a young age. I thought, what? Me? No. What are you talking about? Like you, I've had a charmed life. But it wasn't until 2019 that it all came forward. The repressed memories and much of the trauma, the somatic experiences. And it was because I got to the point in my life where I guess it needed to come out. It needed to be presented. But even still, that wasn't the only trauma. It was just the initial trauma.
Mm.
And after that, much like you, diagnosed CPTSD. I've had numerous traumas throughout my life, and I mask very well. Lots of practice.
Yeah.
The My parents' divorce was very traumatizing. Small town girl, sheltered, very parentified. And later on, after the divorce, much like you, I listened to your podcast, which were quite validating, I must say. Yes. So thank you for doing this
Well,
and putting
thank you
that out there.
for sharing, girl. I'm glad to have you on, honestly, because I follow you on TikTok, and every so often you'll come up on my For You page, and it's always such a delight to have you like on my little screen. But yeah, tell me about the parentification that you started to endure.
Well, it was myself as an oldest, much like you, and I had I had a sister, a
Mm,
younger sister, born 3 years after me in '83, and she, poor thing, redheaded, that just so she was bullied and had low self-esteem and speech impediment. We both couldn't sleep at night. So not having a stable mother around, even though mother had custody, both my mother and my father just went buck wild. And not having my mother around meant that I had to step up to the plate. Even though, to be honest, I think now that I'm thinking back, I was always taking the lead on taking care of her. I always made sure she was okay before I was okay.
mm,
And my mother had a chance to experience life after the divorce, that middle life crisis.
hmm
And in doing so, she be her boyfriend that she chose to leave my father with or from or because of this boyfriend, he was a pedo,
Ugh.
which was, I guess we were the prime gift for a man like him, since it was two girls as children. And even though we found his Polaroids, my mother still chose to be with him and support him financially, everything. After that, there were many other men, all much younger, definitely a cute cougar.
hmm
And it just seemed to be like one after another. There were my my mom's boyfriends, whenever they were done with her, they tried to get with me. They tried to have me drink their uh man juice. They At that time, at 16, we had upped and moved to an entirely new, excuse me, we had upped and moved to an entirely new city, and it was inner city
mm
versus small country town that we lived in before. And so I went through a culture shock as well as my sister. We were one of the few white people there, and we ended up, I would go pick her up from school, bring on the way home, stop and get her some food, bring her to the house. She was 12 years old. It was just my mother, my sister, and I, but my mother was working. Drop her off, and then I would go to work until 11 o'clock at night, and then wake up in the morning, go to school, and do the same thing all over again. So it was a constant endeavor to survive. And financially, I was already supporting myself at 15. So, uh, what is it to have someone take care of at
Yeah.
that time, and to carry it on into adulthood? I was sexually assaulted on a date when I was 16, and I didn't let my parents know about that until my mid 30s, I want to
Mm,
say. I kept it all in. Being a gymnast,
yeah.
being a dancer, and always putting on a smile just really had me proficient at masking and creating a false self, to be honest. So much had happened up to that 16 years of age. And my mother and I, much like you, had a strained relationship. We still are very strained to this day.
Mm,
You know, it is what it is.
yeah.
Uh,
It's very hard, especially when you become a mom and you then start to recognize like, oh my gosh, my mom did a lot of shit that I would have never done or will never do to my own
Absolutely.
children.
Yes. At 15, she didn't have a girlfriend to go with her to the bars. So I was the eye candy that attracted the men for her. She brought me to bars and had me, I was already a dancer. So I didn't have any fear. I had no shame getting out on the dance floor wearing fishnets and itty bitty black skirt that would attract the basically the pedos, to be honest. Even though they didn't know my age, I appeared much more mature and older than I looked. But looking back, I would never, ever, ever in a million years do that with my daughter. So
Yeah.
a lot
And
of hurt.
go ahead, go ahead.
Well, just a lot of hurt, when you don't really notice that it took place and was out of the norm until you start voicing your scenario. And then you get this weird look from the other person then which you're speaking with, and oh what? Oh, and then that came out of my mouth. What? It's
Yeah. Oh, and I want to say that that's horrible what you went through, that your mom basically used you as bait to get to other people. I mean, the level of insecurity that she has is insane. Insane. And
yeah,
oh, that's like ugh, so gross.
it
That's
is. And as well as the men she dated, they were very they wore women's clothes, musicians, just a variety of different men. She really didn't have a type as much, I guess, because you said her low self-esteem. She was just more willing to grab anything that looked at her.
mm,
And looking at it now, definitely had so many daddy issues, not necessarily mother issues, but she's definitely passed that down and,
hmm
and carried on. But that's just the CPTSD part. I wanted to get out of the house as quickly as possible. So I graduated high school a year early. I skipped my junior year and graduated with honors and just got out of there. I moved out of the house at 17, and which led to another trauma.
Yeah, of course.
It's like so even though moving out at 17, I again would never have looked the part of 17. At that time, 17-year-olds had to have like a parental letter. I had to have a parental letter in order to move into an apartment because it verified I wasn't a runaway. They didn't want to be housing a runaway. So
Yeah.
things you don't think about at all. Today it's much more common for people to move out at 17. But yeah, the boyfriend that I had lived with, that we went to school together, but we weren't together in that regard until after graduation. And I moved out with him. Even though I knew him, we weren't together in a relationship very long. So he ended up cheating on me. It was devastating at 17 years old, undergoing that. I I wish women would talk more openly about some of the situations that arise when you're cheated on.
Mm.
It was a blow to my ego and my heart and my trusting instinct. And I kept coming down with yeast infections. And that's the
Mm.
thing that I think so many women don't talk about. If your body is having that kind of response, the chemistry is off, the pH is off, and it's either, your intuition trying to let you know, or it's not cleaning himself after. Yeah, it was very traumatizing for me. And so I had to move back in with my mother and heal. And it was my sister who was really my compassionate counterpart, my soulmate, who healed me.
That's such a blessing. I mean, I get that. And yes, I don't think we talk enough about the repercussions of cheating on not just your psyche, but your physical body. You
Yes.
have a whole response to it. When I was in, I guess, my sophomore, junior year of college, when my dad had the accident, I was dating a guy who was staying with his sister who lived a mile away from me. And I met this dude on Tinder. I'm gonna fucking dox you right now, bro. Your name is Jonah. If you're ever watching, fuck you, Jonah. But
Good for
I
you.
fuck you, Jonah. But he destroyed my self-esteem when it was my self-esteem wasn't low, but I was already devastated at kind of the loss of my father because once my dad was hit by the car and had his traumatic brain injury, he never could speak a full sentence again. He lost all capacities to be a father. And this guy, Jonah, had met my dad before the accident, had been near my dad, and I love my dad so very much. Rest in peace, Daddy. My dad had all of my respect. And so that really fucked with me when I found out, like, I kind of felt it that Jonah was cheating on me because he would go back and forth from Arkansas to Dallas, Texas, like every so often.
Arkansas. Dallas.
Dallas.
Yeah. Mm.
And he would come back, and I would always feel like really weird because would he kept like wanting to try sexual things with me, and I didn't really want to. First and foremost, I just didn't. And it always felt like a constant pressure. Oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this. And I never really felt safe. And I was almost to the point of breaking up with him. And then I found out that he was cheating on me. And I found out that he cheated on me the day after my birthday. And
Oh,
it wrecked me. It wrecked me so much. And I was at his sister's house, and it was like the early morning. And like something in my spirit said, look at his phone, which I didn't open his phone. I just clicked the screen, and it had a bunch of text messages, like I guess, showed up, and it said, like, this girl said, "Oh, I loved it when you did this to me yesterday." And I was like, in my spirit, I was like, "Oh my God." And so I climbed out of like his bedroom window, and the fence was locked. So I tried to scale the fence, and he saw me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I don't know what was in my body, but I like screamed like I had never screamed before, screamed at him like, how could you do this to
yes.
me? Like,
Yeah.
you are a horrible human being. Like, I
That visceral response, that
Mhm.
adrenaline and the shock. Yes, yes.
And I was like, I need to walk home. I need to get out of here. I need to leave. And so his brother-in-law had woken up, thought I was being murdered. And he was like, I'll open the fence. Just wait for a second. Wait for a second. He's like putting on his like robe. And he comes out, he's like, what happened? I'm like, he cheated on me. He cheated on me the day after my birthday. Like, he's scum of the earth. Like, you are not a man. You are less than a man. You are not anything to me. Let me go. And as I was trying to walk home, he just drove beside me. He's like, I just want to make sure you get home safe. I'm like, bitch, this is my neighborhood. I'm fine. You leave me alone. And he wouldn't stop spamming me with text messages, with calls for months, because this happened in June, like till November, wouldn't stop spamming me. And it messed me up. It messed up my self-confidence, like
Yes.
my worth, like physically, I got so drained. I was already starting to have seizures, but the seizures kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I just felt so, so sick to
Your
my
body was
core.
screaming at you. Yes, it was trying to let you know. That's amazing.
It was
Our
insane.
bodies really do know. Our bodies try to have this connection, but due to our previous trauma and narcissistic parents, different life experiences, we just don't listen to it sometimes, or we don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And trauma affects how you build bonds in your relationships, especially relational trauma. And it's very hard to trust anyone or be fully committed in next relationships when you feel like that cheating might happen again. It's really also difficult to express or regulate your emotions. You might have difficulty saying what you're thinking without an emotional outburst. It's hard to respect authority figures, especially as women. You know, it's ingrained in us to respect men, which I think is ridiculous. But like, it's ingrained in us to have respect. But when someone basically uses you for their own like pleasure, fulfillment, what have you, and
Yeah.
then throws you away, because that's what cheating really is. It's throwing you away and saying that you're nothing to me but something to fulfill an urge. And I'm going to go fulfill an urge with this other person and this other person and disregard you.
The
It's,
next step from a hand, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah. It's frustrating. It's
Degrading, it's betrayal,
mhm,
helplessness. It makes you hopeless after that. And you said it earlier, I think, when you said his brother or brother-in-law thought that you were
mhm,
being murdered. Well, in
mhm.
essence, your innocence was murdered at that time. All of your previous notions of what love was and a relationship was shattered. And sometimes we never get put back together. It's
Yeah. And if we think about like it in, stages of what happened, like June 19th, 2020, my dad was hit by a car. June 22nd was my birthday. June 23rd was the day he cheated on me. June 24th was the day I found out. So,
June is like, so now you probably call off all arrangements, all appointments, everything, the whole month of June, every year. That's a tough one.
June is not a great time for me. And what really I'm struggling with, as I'm getting older, because my birthday is coming up and I'll be 24. The 2 days before my dad's accident, my dad actually, growing up, he would wheel me and my brothers around in these giant wheelbarrows, and then he would attach them to the back of his lawnmower, which he had like one of those big, big ones. And he would attach like three or four and make a train and drive us around when we were kids at our birthday parties. And so 2 days before the accident, he found one of them and he was like, Gracie, get in it. And so I sat in it and he started pulling me along throughout our backyard, which we had 4 acres of backyard.
And he's like, I can't believe that you're going to be an adult. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an adult. But he's like, no, you're always going to be my baby anyway. And that was one of the last conversations we had. And so I think
Wow.
about that all the time and think of it's it's very difficult as I'm getting older because my dad never got the privilege of aging. I think aging is such a privilege. He died at 47. I think aging is such a privilege. And as I'm getting older, I think part of me almost regressed a bit once my dad's accident occurred because I was parentified my entire life. And now I'm at the point where I have a fiance and he takes very, very good care of me. And I don't have to work a normal job for money. I do work, I make jewelry and I do the podcast and I teach voice and acting lessons, but I don't have to go into a 9 to 5 because he provides for me. And I was thinking about it recently of like, my dad really would have liked this man that I'm with. And I remember my dad hated Jonah. My dad hated him and told me that I could do better. And I was just a dumb kid. And I think on it like, how can I continue to heal this of not regressing into that childlike state and allowing myself a space to still have that innocence, that inner child, but not regress and be, you know, codependent or dependent on another person to the point where it's almost like I need to protect myself in a way. And it's not from Joey, who's my fiance, but it's like in other relationships. I now notice that because of what has happened to me, it's so hard to
Yeah.
trust.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in the same boat as you. Yeah. The USS No Trust boat. Yes. Well, I'm glad that you found someone now that's a man, a real man, and
Yes.
a man in many different ways, a provider and a caretaker, nurturer, compassionate, understanding,
He is all of
communicates.
that.
Yeah.
He is a plumber and he's doing his best. And the other day, I think a lot of people, we have to redefine what is being a woman and what is being a man because, my entire childhood I was told, oh, men don't cry. Joey
Oh,
cries. Joey cries. And
oh, he is a man.
the other day, he came home and I was like, okay, I would like a kiss. And he's like, I need to take a shower first. But I took that as a rejection. So I got upset with him. And so as he came out, he had brought home dinner. And as he came out, he was like, okay, it's time to eat. And I was still in my pouty bitch mood of being like, he didn't kiss me, so I'm going to punish him by not coming and sitting down at dinner. I'm just going to put away all the laundry and fold everything and just be mad. And he sat at the table and he started to cry. And I was like, fuck, I'm mean. And I came at his table, I was like, why are you crying? He's like, because I wasn't ready for affection yet, because I had a hard day at work. And then I come home and I understand that I rejected a bid for connection and I'm
Did.
sorry. And oh, I feel like I'm a shitty person. You're not a shitty person. We've just been shitty together. I'm very sorry for that. And today, this morning, I texted him because he leaves really early for work. I texted him and I was like, I said, I'm sorry for my behavior yesterday. And he said, I forgive you. And I'm sorry I wasn't emotionally available when I got home.
Oh, he has done so much work, so much inner work, and
Mhm.
such a good communicator. That's amazing. That gives me hope.
He's
But your
okay.
generation. Oh, it's not so grand with my generation. Yeah.
There's
But
always hope. There's always hope for people to heal, but it's the sole writing factor is that we need to recognize that there's a problem. Is I feel
yes,
like a lot of people are living in a delusion of my way or the highway, and for us to grow and develop as human beings, we need to recognize our faults. Like I recognize I was bitch to him like once he didn't give me a kiss. I was very upset and I felt very self-righteous in my ability to be upset. And I whenever I'm upset, a good thing about as I've noticed my healing going forward, my window of being upset is not very long. It keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And being able to reconnect with myself and being like, okay, why am I upset? Oh, I was just upset for a small thing, which Joey has autism, and his ability to be physical is very limited, whether it be like a touch on the arm. If I look at him too long, it makes him uncomfortable. But we have to constantly communicate with one another of being like, this is making me uncomfortable. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because I'm uncomfortable. It's a me thing. And I have to constantly correct myself and be like, okay, he's not rejecting you. He
right,
has been in a sewer all day and he would not want to kiss you because, yeah, in his mind, that's nasty. He wants to
right.
shower first and be clean and then
And he
kiss
knows you
his clean
deserve better.
fiance. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows that you deserve to kiss a man who's not covered in sewage.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of self-reflection that needs to happen for us to start healing our trauma. And speaking on that, from your perspective, Katie, what would you want our listeners to know about your healing journey and how you started to heal?
You know, we really don't change until we're forced to. I don't think anybody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to go through my healing journey. I'm ready to cry for months on end and puffy eyes be my norm and everything tipped me off. I can't wait for that experience. I really think that healing is all about grieving. It's all about experiencing the pain that you've pushed aside or pushed down or just not allowed yourself to experience. For me, my body was going through just as much pain as my emotional sector. I ended up going through a lot of chronic, which meant that it was deeply embedded in my cells and my muscular makeup. Being again a gymnast, I was pushed to the max growing up. My body was traumatized, as gymnasts of my time period experienced. We had other people push us down into positions and lengthen the fibers of our muscles and stretch the fibers. Um, I won state of Texas when I was young, and my family and coaches wanted to prep me for nationals. And that's when I decided, like, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't have a childhood from 2 years old. So for me, from an outside perspective, and I've even been told, well, man, you were given such an opportunity. But in all reality, I was exploited. I was denied my humanity and disconnected from my body, disconnected from my emotions. I felt like I had to perform in order to receive love. And I didn't know that until I began my healing journey. And then I think whenever, not I think, but I know that for everyone, when they go through that healing journey, when they decide to recover, they get to the point of anger. as they look at what has been done to them, how they've reacted because of it, what is the ricocheting effect of it, and anger toward the people that were a part of that decision making. And it's not until the end of the journey that you realize that they're humans too, they're people too. And they're acting on their trauma. They're acting on what's happened to them projected onto you. My mother didn't get to experience anything growing up at all, except for moving clear across the US at a young age and being made fun of and bullied and rejected because of it. So she tried to give me what she didn't have. Unfortunately, obsessive compulsive disorder runs in the family, and she pushed a little too much. There's a lot to be said about balance. And in the healing journey, everybody finds their balance. I think for anybody who's wanting to go through or is stuck in the middle of their trauma recovery or their healing journey, they have to be mindful. They have to learn compassion for themselves and know what it is to be human. We're all going to mess up. We're all going to make mistakes here, now, in the past, in the future, but that's part of being human. And we need to say that more often. I think people that keep it together and look perfect all the time, or are scared to cry, or have a problem with vulnerability, they expect to be perfect. They expect to be above human. They expect to, and they may not even notice it at the time, but that's the hidden belief that they can't experience all of what it's like to be human. And when you accept that with yourself and give yourself compassion, you'll extend it to other people. I used to think that I was very compassionate. I've always been one with animals, and I've always been one with nature. And I've always felt like I've mothered everybody around me. But then there was another side of me that was very judgmental. And it was stemmed from me being pushed and me being judged and critiqued and enduring so much that was all I knew. It's definitely tough for anybody who's wanting to go through this or is in the middle of it. They need to realize that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It is so worth it. It is so worth it. Yes, you might have puffy eyes. Yes, you may lose friends. Yes, you may lose everything that you know of, but that's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen to start anew and to become the person that you're supposed to be, that you would have been without the trauma, or that your purpose really is. And you don't know that until you go through it. You're going to feel lost. And that's okay, because the way that the building blocks were arranged growing up is not the way that it was supposed to be. Or it was, but that's not the way it has to be. And there's many things that were left out. Just because they're our parents doesn't mean that they know everything and that they did everything right, because they're human.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so true. And I have to remind myself that all the time, especially when it comes to my mom, of, she did a lot of very good things for me, but the bad definitely outweighs the good. And I've had a lot of different therapists, and one of my male therapists that I had, his name is Todd. Shout out Todd, love you. He's a psychiatrist, but he also did talk therapy every so often. But he retired, and I was one of his last clients before he retired. And he said to me, he was like, Grace, I have seen countless clients come in through my doors and now online, and talking about their parents, and essentially they would come to therapy just because they wanted to know how they can fix their parents. They would tell me, there's no way you can fix your mother. There's nothing you can do. And
Yeah.
until you recognize that, you are just going to be hitting a wall over and over and over. And the way that I have self-harmed my entire life is by slamming my head into a wall, which actually is a very well documented dysfunctional trauma response when your parent, your guardian, your attachment trauma is either they will love you and then show you hatred, and then show you love and then show you hatred. So children that have been studied will run around in circles because they don't know what to do. They won't run to their parents or run away from their parents. They'll run around in circles, or they'll slam their heads into certain things, or they'll cry when they've been picked up, or cry when they're being put down because they don't know how to regulate with their parents. They don't know if their parents are safe. And he's like, you as a child were never safe. You as an adult will never be safe with her. No matter if you think that she has healed, you're not going to be safe with her because you're going to keep going back to that spot of being a child and being not safe until you heal that little child, until you make her feel safe and secure. You will never be safe with her. And he's like, and then bringing in the narcissism that she is diagnosed with, narcissism that she is inflicting upon you, where you have never been important in her eyes. You've just been a means to an end, supply.
Yes.
You are not going to be valuable to her. Your relationship is not valuable to her. Your relationship is a means to an end.
Yes.
And you are not a human to her. So if you try and try and try to rebuild a relationship with her, you're just picking up sand and trying to make a sandcastle right by the water's edge. The waves are going to keep crashing it over, keep crashing it over, keep pushing it down. There's nothing you can do about that. It's like relationships from parents to children are a one-way street, and it's the parent towards the child. It is not the child towards the parent until the
That's
child is an adult. What'd you say?
that's absolutely true. Yes. Yes. Even though the parent will try to make it seem like it's the child's fault, it's not. It's correct.
And he told me, he was like, no, there's no way for you to build up a relationship with your mother if she doesn't know what a relationship is. And that really messed with me because my entire childhood, my mom would always say that I was her best friend, just like you were saying about your mom.
Yes. Yes.
And so I, as a teenager, would try to look for friends that I thought were like my mom. And I would get used by these people and constantly abandoned. And I would constantly vie for their attention. And the way that I show love is through gifts. And so I was constantly giving, giving, giving to these people, and they be taking, taking, taking. And I don't feel burnt out by giving, love it, but I would be constantly taken advantage of. And when I finally reached my breaking point in 2020, after, Jonah, after my dad, after moving me and my brother to Lubbock for college, and I asked, who I thought was my friend group, if they could, you know, spend time with me and help me out because I needed help. Scattered like the wind. Like I had nobody. I had nobody to fall back on, nobody to rely on.
Yes.
And I now have reached a point where I'm not angry about it. I'm not sad about it. I'm not hurt by it anymore. And I'm honestly glad because I wouldn't want those people in my life now, period. And the people that
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
allowing, the people that I'm allowing into my space deserve to be here. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship. It's a relationship where I'm giving to them and they're giving back to me. And I could not appreciate them more. I couldn't like shout out to Kaylee, shout out to Bailey, shout out to Christina. Girls, I love you so much because they are here for me. And I would not have been able to find them had I not lost, quote, quote, lost the people that were essentially holding me back and holding me hostage in a way.
Yeah, just using you over and over. Absolutely. I just cleaned house with all of the people that I spent my life with. And it's not until they grow or change or step into their humanity, until their actions show that they're worthy to step back into my life. I would love to hope that they could get there, but I'm not holding my breath. And meanwhile, as they take their time, my door is open for others. And that's within going through your healing journey, especially for mine. We have a broken heart and we build this armor around our heart, but we don't really get to reveal or remove the armor that's around our heart, to reveal the scars and the infection that's within it. And it's not until we can clean that out that we can really move on and be at peace. And it's so easy once you've gone through it to see it in others. I see so many people that are walking around hurting, whether they know it or not. They've developed so much armor. And to me, I feel that the armor is weakness. It's I'm a huge fan of The Cure. They're my favorite band outside of the Cranberries. And they have that song, Boys Don't Cry. And I've listened to it recently and I thought, oh, the World War II era, the World War I era, oh, how it's still alive in the 80s whenever the song came out. Because that was the way of thinking, to just suck it up and survive. That was the gymnast way of thinking. That's the masculine, old school way of thinking. But it's not the healthy and the modern day way of thinking. Instead, it's to feel it, to sit with it, to move through it, to transmute it, to find reason in it, to learn the lesson. Every time my son goes through something, goes through any experience where he has to cry, which is often, he'll eventually get to a point where I can say, okay, what did you learn? And my intention is to get that embedded, my voice in his head, so that later on he can learn to take accountability and to not have a connotation attached to that experience. You know, it's bad, it's good, it is what it is. Now, what did we learn from it? Yeah, okay, things did happen for a reason or they didn't, but what did we learn from it? And can only get there through healing. And you can really see how much healing a parent goes through by how they parent their children. Definitely. And I'm so fortunate that I waited so long to have kids. I thought I waited long enough, but ooh, there's still so much growing to do. I still have so much to conquer in the realm of mental health for me to fully give back the way that I'd love to. But that's my perfectionism speaking, for sure. Definitely. Life's like a box of chocolates, but in healing, it's life's like a box of Kleenexes. You always keep using more and more. You know, it's grieving and crying and taking accountability, knowing where you went wrong, what you could have done, and the lessons learned because of it. Definitely.
And how do you, as a parent, make sure that you don't pass on your trauma and your trauma responses to your children?
Oh, I will. I hate to say it, but I will. That's just the human nature. I'm learning as I'm going along, and I mean, in all reality, I think every parent fucks up their child in some way, shape, or form. No matter how hard they try, you can't cover all the bases. That's just being human. Well, and I guess this is a good intro into this aspect of my trauma that I went through in 2019. I had a severe trauma that occurred with my daughter's father, uh, with my ex-husband. When it came time to divorce, he didn't take it kindly and used all of the male chauvinistic tactics of gaslighting and bringing out the gun and closing the door with the gun with our daughter in the room. Tried to have me committed. All of this in Arkansas.
Mm.
And it ended up in tragedy. Absolute tragedy. My daughter at 4 years old was ripped away from me because he tried to have me committed. And in Arkansas, what the man says goes. It's a very chauvinistic state. And so it was at that time that, in the process of them trying to unveil my level of sanity versus insanity versus trauma versus reactive abuse from the gun and breaking down the door, removing my keys so I couldn't go anywhere, being 7 hours away from anyone I knew. The cops saying, well, whenever he leaves, he usually comes back after we leave. So I'm in this state of panic where I couldn't feel like I could sleep and I couldn't stay awake. And I reached out to an old lover that let me down. Was a very weak man and couldn't even respond. And so I was in this state of more panic, more rejection, more, am I going to live? Am I going to live through this night? So needless to say, I ended up in a Salvation Army, and I was homeless because I couldn't go back home. I lost custody of my daughter because in the process of them trying to figure out my level of trauma, my level of insanity versus sanity, which I'm not insane. But at that time, I was so worked up in survival mode, so much in panic. They were trying to decipher that. Was this situational or was this biological, chemical? Drugs were involved, of course. And so he didn't want me to be heard. So he silenced me. And while I was detained during that process, he filed for divorce. He beat me to the punch. And because I was in that position of having the social workers check me out and all kinds of things, he automatically got custody. And when I obviously had everything dropped, I was not insane. It was situational. He had taken my anxiety meds. He had taken my ADHD meds. It ended up ripping my daughter away and facilitating another wound that would last her inevitably. My mother ended up taking the stand against me at that time because my mother, who's also undiagnosed narcissist, she knew that she would have a better chance with my ex-husband than she would with me. I had just started to go through counseling and I wasn't going to put up with that shit anymore. I chose to back away from her narcissistic tendencies and her toxicity, and she was scared that I would keep my daughter away from her. So she chose the path of my ex-husband. She stayed in the house that was my home. She stayed in the house with my ex-husband. She had to have paid for the lawyer or helped, because there's no way he could have afforded that, especially with all of his habits that continued. So I later remarried. Many years later, he remarried as soon as we got divorced. And I thought everything would be wonderful. I found a man. I found a real man who could communicate with me and who had such intelligence and deep down discussions. We ended up getting married 4 years later. 4 years seems to be my thing too. After 4 years with my ex-husband, I married. After 4 years with my late husband, we married. About a month later, I became pregnant. It seemed like the fairy tale that I'd always wanted. And we had a very easygoing delivery, which is not like my daughter at all. Horrible. Another trauma. That was a medical trauma with my daughter. I almost died. And horrible 32-hour delivery after the water broke. Hemorrhaged for the last 2 hours. So that was a struggle. And when I remarried with my late husband, it seemed like a year after our son was born that he changed. He changed the moment we married, actually, but he really changed and pulled back and detached completely. He ended up taking his life in 2019.
I'm so sorry.
Well, it's a sad scenario. He left a son. He was 2 years old at the time. And he left me to do it all by myself, which I didn't sign up for. You never know what life will bring you. And before he left, he fell into bad habits again, bad alcoholic. I tend to be with all alcoholics. It's the empathic mothering. You know, little girls fall in love with their dads, and therefore they tend to marry men much like their fathers if they're straight in their love relationships. But yeah, he was abusive, highly emotionally and mentally abusive. And the gaslighting was extreme. I broke over and over again. And then after I broke, there was financial abuse as well. So I experienced all the levels except for being hit as that domestic violence. I've had them hit the wall around me and threaten and called cops more than I should admit. But I think if any of the men would have touched me in that regard, I think they would have. I fight back. I'm pretty strong. The gymnast in me. I fortunately survived. It was going to be a murder-suicide, but when he stepped into the house, the sitter was here watching my kids instead of it being the other way around. A little voice inside my head said, I had come back from therapy and I was driving and I thought, you know, I should stop at Walmart and grab a few things. You know what? Instead of bringing the kids to Walmart, I should go ahead and just take care of this. So go ahead. I thought, just pay the extra money and have your sitter, stay with them. If I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be here today, as well as I think my kids would have been gone. It's my late husband took his life just like his father before him. And the father's father ended up disappearing, nowhere to be seen again, never to be seen again. So my son has been diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Everybody in the family is ADHD. It's quite a fun house we have. But I do think that was part of the culprit. Mental illness definitely flows through my late husband's side of the family in many ways, many different areas. And it's hard to say as far as women and mental illness, because they're so easy to just slap on, bipolar or hysteria or schizophrenia, when really it could have been something as simple as a hormonal imbalance or a heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
We've come a long ways, thankfully, but we're not there yet. But I'm definitely putting my bids in for the bear and not the man on this one.
I get that.
So yeah, 2019 was definitely whenever all of my traumas hit, much like you, and it seems to just land that way, one thing after another. 2019, he took his life, and in the 3 days after taking his life, my sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, terminal cancer, with a year to live. It was July 9th whenever he died. I ended up leaving my profession as an art teacher, an artist, and a school teacher, as well as an English teacher and PE teacher. So I had just abandoned that profession, which changed my life upside down completely. Everything that I knew, right down to my shit schedule. It was because that's another thing. Teachers have to get that down, because you definitely can't leave the classroom. So if you've got to go number 2, you got to schedule that stuff. So that means you got to eat the same time every day. So anyway, so yes, I went through a lot. 6 months later, after my husband took his life, I had to put my dog down for heart failure. And this was just a beautiful soul. She was there when everything went down the night with my ex-husband. She was there to protect me. And so I lost a being that I love dearly. 6 months after that, on the exact same day as my husband, my sister passed. So I lost July 9th, my late husband, and July 9th in 2020, I lost my sister. And it was just she and I. She was my best friend up until my mother had to, separate because we were too close. She put her little wrench in.
I'm so sorry.
Well, I don't cry anymore. I've really worked through a lot. And like you said, my therapists have really helped me. My psychiatrist is a saving grace, an amazing woman. I've been with her for 5 years now. 2019. I can't count. You don't have to count very much with art. Okay.
I get that.
That's right. If anybody wants to get an art degree, you only need one college math course. So
hell yeah, let's go.
Yes. So it's been a ride, and there's been so much in between that. I was in a car wreck, hit by a drunk driver. I didn't know he was a drunk driver until I took him to court. And I had to change my degree because of that car wreck. I was a dance major, and now I struggle with my body and I coordinating each other. So I miss it. I miss it dearly. I love to dance.
I get that.
Definitely. Yeah. So, but I do think that it was a bit of serendipity or synchronicity or whatever you want to call it, that happened in my life. I think if I wouldn't have been in that car wreck, if I wouldn't have done the extra mile going to see my boyfriend instead of being a feminine woman and allowing him to come to me, which looking back, that's what I should have done. I think that I would have continued that path of dance. I would have been vain. I would have documented every little calorie that I ate, which is what dancers do, and always thought I was fat. And instead, I wouldn't be here talking with you and partaking in the journey of my healing. I wouldn't have got to that point, I don't think. So I'm grateful for it now.
I'm grateful you're here too. And I completely understand that. I have 2 degrees in theater. And for both degrees, I just needed one math class. But I fully understand the dancer aspect because in theater, I have an overarching theater degree and I had to take jazz and ballet every semester. And in 2021, January, I had a really massive grand mal seizure and fell down a flight of stairs and separated my gluteus maximus from my hip bones and a bunch of other muscles as well, tore them away from my bones. And I went to the hospital and they didn't believe me. Had to go back 7 different times for them to finally start taking me seriously. They were like, "Oh, you probably have an STD." I'm like, "Bitch, I'm celibate. What are you talking about? I'm not having sex since Jonah. What are you talking about?" Ain't no way.
Exactly. That'll
And
ruin you. It did
I,
for me.
And I just kept being persistent and going to different hospitals and going back and going back. And finally I went into septic shock and one of my guy friends was like, "She hasn't texted me in 2 days. I'm gonna go see if she's okay." And he found me and he was like, "You were blue. You were blue. You were blue. I thought you had died." And he rushed me to the hospital and they're like, "Oh, you're going into septic shock." And I had a cyst the size of a softball on my butt where I had separated all the muscles. And they had to do a 7-hour emergency surgery to save my life and also drain the cyst and reattach muscle and all that greatness. Did you know that they can do a vaginal exam on you in Texas and you don't have to sign consent? Well, I found that out because they did a full vaginal exam on me while I was out.
Well, yes, because here in Texas, they don't treat women as humans. We're just an object.
Yeah.
We're a whole.
Yeah.
We're only one step up from a hand. So yes, of course. I'm
I
sorry to
found
hear.
that out. I was so mad because I had to show, my medical documents to all of my teachers to show that, hey, I can't come to class. I was bedridden for 3 months because I had a 8-inch long incision that was 2 inches deep and 1 inch wide on my leg, starting at my butt and going down my leg. And I had to show them the doctor's like notes and it said vaginal exam on there. And one of my teachers, Alan, he was like, "Hey, gray this out next time you're saying it to people." And I was like, "Wait, vaginal exam?" And he's like, "Gracie, look." And I was like, "Oh, they did a vaginal exam on me? Why?" And he was like, "They can do that on you. And once you're out for any reason at all, they can legally." It's like,
Wow.
what? So that's how I found
But
out, which is crazy.
it really does make sense though, because really cowboys, the only reason that women came over here were as prostitutes, to Texas. That's where it all started. So the belief was set back in the day. That's what that's what our purpose was.
Yeah, it's just so crazy. But
Wow.
I couldn't dance at all. I couldn't walk for 2.5 months. Um, it was really intense. And more recently, I've been like, I would like to be able to fully move my body because yes, your body keeps this trauma, and on this half of my body, I'm not flexible at all anymore. Can't really do anything. And it's like frustrating. So frustrating. So I'm trying to heal it because I'm 24 years old. I know it's not too late for me. I can heal myself. And I also am trying to be super mindful that I don't go back into that pattern of disordered eating because I also went through that, my entire life with my mother. Like my mother
Yes.
was extremely obese. And so whenever she would go on fad diets, she would make me go on them too. And I was just a teenager, just a kid. I she fucked up my metabolism like extremely because she would go on, essentially binges and then she wouldn't eat and she wouldn't put food in the house. So me and my brother starved random times in our life. And so, your body is like, I need this. I need this. We don't know when the
Stores it.
next starvation mode is going to happen. We need it.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right on that. It doesn't know the difference, and no food around, and it's winter time, and let's just go ahead and store it just in case. And it will definitely mess up your. So you had an involuntary eating disorder.
mm-hmm.
I definitely struggled with my share of eating disorders from a very young age. And it wasn't until, well, whenever I get into tough times, the inner voice is still there heavily. But after having kids, it all changes. And it was a long road of acceptance for me. But I've been scrutinized. I think that's one area that a man knows that he can get to me or make me hurt is anything that has to do with body dysmorphia or telling me, my thighs are too large, or uh, you know, my choice in clothing or underclothes. It all goes back to my trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I I remember being 4 years old and choosing where to stand in the group photos with my gymnastic team in hopes that it would cover my thighs. I was 4. So in high school, I was anorexic, and just kind of carried that on until I fell hard, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That sense of control or perfectionism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
my mother used to do the diets as well. And oh man, I was always raised on the most minimal of foods, or what I was allowed to eat or wasn't. My dinner would consist of a baked potato with nothing on it but salsa. And
Salsa baked potatoes. Oh, it's such a poor man's food. I had that all the time.
yep, that was it. We could have salt and pepper, and that was it. There's nothing else on it. And what's the other ones? Rice, white rice with tomato sauce. And then like a puffy rice with peaches. Yeah, it was. I don't want to eat any of that ever again. Noodles, just noodles, nothing on it, just noodles. Yeah.
I feel that like totally of those foods that you never want to eat again. For me, it's baked beans. I never want to see a can of baked beans ever again. I will never buy any type of bean ever again because that's all she would give us essentially. It was really
Oh, I live
frustrating.
on beans.
I can't eat them.
I had
Can't
beans
do it.
twice today.
Girl, good for you. I can't do it. I can't eat the
Oh,
beans. I know that beans taste good, but it unlocks something in my brain of, oh, these are the hard times.
yep, yep. It goes straight to that memory sector in the brain. One of our senses. Absolutely. Wow.
These are the hard times. But like a comfort, because we got to get into the self-care, because self-care is a really big part of healing all trauma. And for a lot of people, different types of food are a self-care. And for me specifically, cookies are self-care. And because I was never allowed to have them because my mom's like, oh, I can't have them, you can't have them. And
Yes.
so I don't know if you love crumble, like I love crumble, but I love crumble. And Joey and I will get a box of 4 every 2 weeks. And then we will keep them in the fridge and split them into 6s. And then we'll each get like a 6 of a cookie. And it's like the best little sweet treat ever. It's so exciting.
Cookies are good.
I love my little cookie. And I told this to a lady that she's the wife of someone my fiance works with. And she was like, so you guys just get crumble every week? You know, those cookies are like 1,000 calories. I'm like, first off, I don't count calories anymore because that is
No.
not healthy. And secondly, we split them up. I could never eat an entire giant cookie. Like my teeth would fall out. There's no way. There's no way. Those cookies are massive. They last forever. It's honestly awesome. And it makes me very
I've
happy.
never had them. I've never had them. I don't even know what they are, to be honest. But I
Crumble
bake my own
cookies.
cookies.
Girl, I love that too. I love baking as well. But Crumble, they have like 6 new flavors every week. So it's not the same cookie all the time. And the cookies right now are like peach cobbler and milk chocolate chunk. And I think it's called skillet cookie. And it's like a bunch. They have like a sugar cookie that has like the animal cracker, little sugar, like the frosted animal crackers with the sprinkles.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
cookie inspired by those. They're awesome. I love them. They're really great. It's
Yeah.
I just
I'll
love
take
it.
your word for it.
So that for me, that was a way of self-care because growing up, whenever we go to, Walmart or Target, you know that they have like those sugar cookies and like the whole packet of sugar, those soft sugar cookies with like the icing. I only ever had those at school when they would have like little parties. And my mom would always get so angry at me. She's like, those have 1,000 calories. We'll never buy those. You can never have those. And I, as an adult, I was like, wait, I can buy cookies. I can buy myself cookies. I'm gonna buy
I can buy
myself some
myself
cookies.
cookies.
Exactly.
Write my name in the icing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So for me, that was a way of self-care, of not restricting stuff, because only when we start to restrict is when you create that little thing in your brain of we want what we can't have. And so you're gonna binge and overdo it with that thing that you can't have. And I'm not gonna do that with myself ever.
Learn to moderate. Yep.
Yeah. It's really important to learn what your level of tolerance is for different things and um not overdo it. And I think that's also when it comes to alcohol, I think that's also like a huge thing with, the younger people of like, oh, this is forbidden, like I can't have alcohol, and then they drink to excess and then they get hooked on it and continue to drink, and they'll drink to cope and drink to not feel or drink to feel. And
Yeah,
from my
drink.
perspective, yeah,
That's a good point.
it's something that my dad never had alcohol, so I never felt the need to drink, but my mom would drink pretty often. Of She would hide them and she would drink pretty often, and I noticed that she was not very nice when she had alcohol, or she would be very flippant when she had alcohol. And so I decided at a very, very young age, and I stuck to this conviction that I would never have alcohol till I turned 21. So when I did turn 21 and I tried it, I was like, what is, there's no draw for me. There's
Right.
there's no need to. I'm fun on my own without the alcohol. I'm a pretty fun person. I don't need the alcohol to have fun. And I noticed a lot of people, especially in college, were like, "Oh, let's get drunk. Oh, let's get crunk. Let's drink a lot of stuff. Let's party." And I was always, I guess, that weird kid of being like, "Why? I don't need
Yes.
it."
I was the same. I don't drink alcohol either, and I wasn't raised with it. My parents both didn't drink. I just don't prefer it all. And even the bar scene, the club scene, I'm over it. I did enough of that at 15. I enjoyed it later on if I wanted to dance or to go out with the girls, but that all ended in my early 20s. I just didn't buy into it.
Mhm.
But you get me a couple of girls over and we play Cards Against Humanity, or we do some painting or scrapbooking, and I'm all about it. I'm the most funnest, boring person you've ever met.
Hell yeah, dude. And that's another way of self-care, is being around other people, because humans are social creatures. We need people. We need our tribe. We need to rely on others and then have others rely on us for that sense of purpose. Because I think everyone's lonely nowadays. There's a huge loneliness crisis because we do need validation. We do need to be needed, but we look for those things in, the internet and social media, where that validation isn't fulfilling. That dopamine hit only spikes for a couple seconds, if at all. And you're constantly chasing it, where you could get that oxytocin, that dopamine, from just being with another person, from getting a hug, from having a conversation. You, it's so frustrating for me because, I have to be in the social media world for the podcast. And
Yes.
I did like notice, because I never did Facebook until recently, because I was like, oh, I need to set up something for the podcast. And I just out of the blue joined a craft group and I posted some of my bracelets that I made. And a lot of people responded. I was like, oh no, that's what it feels like. That dopamine. That's what it feels like. Like I understand that how this could be addicting. I do not want to do this. So I immediately deleted Facebook. I was like, never mind.
Yeah, I just recently deleted my Facebook and it's been the most freeing experience for me. I really struggle finding like-minded individuals or those that can maintain a conversation with me with depth and ideas, the banter back and forth without it leaning to judgmental or teasing. I have a very low threshold for that. But I love research and I love hypothesizing and people being real as we are right now. The connection uh, is what gives me the dopamine, but finding that connection is difficult. I have found some very, very good friends on social media. And when I'm having a rough time, I don't have parents. I don't have, extended family. I don't have my sister, but I have some individuals that are on my social media, and they have just come through every time, every time. And of course, they're neurodivergent. So that's why we flock to each other. Exactly. Exactly. I seem to really always, guess, be attracted to or flock to people who are autistic. And I think it's because of the large heart, the big heart, and also the understanding with animals, all of that. But living in Texas, where so many people hunt or don't see a connectedness with animals, just their house pets, it's hard for me to spend time with them. And I live in a smaller town now outside Austin, and I don't drink. I don't go to the bar. So people my age, I've got nothing in common with them. And not to mention, I'm asleep by 9 o'clock, like your little background. Well, I'm not asleep, but I'm in my bed. Yes. And
You're
having a
relaxing.
son that's autistic and ADHD, there's no room. And being a single mom, a widow, there's no room for me to have time to go do some of those endeavors anyway. He's has a lot of abandonment issues and very needy. So that's where my time goes. But I'm very thankful for it. He won't always be like this. So
yeah, he won't. He'll grow up and he'll start to differentiate and move forward in his life and be more self-reliant, and which is all very good things. And I'm glad that you're appreciating the here and now of when.
now I get frustrated though. Oh, for the love
Girl,
of people,
I get
I
that.
get frustrated. Oh, it's hard. I don't even remember the last time I took a shit by myself. I don't know. It's even if I shut the door, he opens it. And if I lock it, there's banging. He has a hard time being in a different room than what I'm in. And that, for someone who really adores her freedom, it's difficult. But thank goodness for my psychiatrist and medication so I can maintain while I have this lifestyle.
I get that. I get that.
And self-soothing, like you said before, is very important. Self-care. I took a really great class called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And that was life-changing. I'm not the person I was when I entered that course. That's an area I want to go into on my TikTok and learn Instagram in order to go into that field there to tackle it. But I think everyone should learn the techniques and the coping skills. It's phenomenal. It should be taught in schools, but instead we do pre-cal and trig, because we've all used that, in our everyday life. So, but they really focused on not a self-care, but a self-soothe. And I found that interesting because when we do think about some things that are self-care, it requires someone else. But in all reality, many of us that have had CPTSD and trauma, we have to learn to soothe ourselves. So for me, baths are my go-to. Give me something so hot that my skin is scalded and my fart fan just has water dripping down from all the heat. Yes, that's what I want. Give me some Epsom salt, soaks into the muscles, gives me some magnesium. I'll take it. That's my big go-to.
I get that. Speaking directly to our listeners, what would be your final thoughts if they're recognizing that they want to start changing some things in their life, what would you say to them as a form of encouragement?
It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't at all. It starts a little bit at a time. Mindfulness, stopping, we get this train of thought in our mind of just going full-fledged one way. And it's so hard to stop and put up the barricade and say, oh, wait, okay, what am I feeling right now? Oh, my heart is pounding. My armpits are sweating. Everything is going really fast in my brain and I need to slow it down. That mindfulness of just pausing is so important because that's where the work is, and I got yoga certified. And one of the things that I learned that was so profound and connected with the rest of life is instead of saying, okay, stop, hold it. That doesn't sound good, but instead it's pause, because that's really what life is about. Whenever you're having a moment, pause, relish it, take it in. If you're outside, pause, feel the sun on your skin. What areas are exposed to the skin? I'm very sensual, and I think that's where we find peace, is when we pause. And then you can go in the direction that you need to go into. Because we so often just are programmed like a hard drive on a computer, and we get viruses that run in the background. But sometimes we need to stop and realize, oh, that's the virus. That's what I was taught. Let's go ahead and do a sweep and clean that out. And I think anybody can do it. I really do. It doesn't take someone who's, successful or intelligent or good looking or has a lot of money. That doesn't quantify success in healing at all. It's the fortitude and the compassion that we give ourselves. It's learning who we are. I really think that the best way to look at it is like taking a shower. We go through our life, or we go through the day, and we experience all this dirty stuff that we step in. We've got grime on us, we've got sweat, our hair's dirty. Maybe we're a mechanic and we've got all of this grease on our hands, and we notice the shower. We make a commitment to taking a shower. It's time to cleanse. And sometimes we prepare things to get ready for our step out. We might get a towel ready or a change of clothes, lay out the lotion, whatever anybody might do. And it's at that time that it really resembles finding a therapist. Before you step in that shower, before you decide to go through the cleaning, before you decide the recovery, you're going to lay stuff out. You're going to find you a therapist, or you're going to find a psychiatrist that gives you medication, or you're going to sign up for a DBT course. Those are the things that you lay out before you even start the recovery process, or in the very beginning. You might have the water running so it gets a little warmed up, but then you decide to step in the shower. And we have our method, our process, and it starts from head to toe usually. People, they might do different steps, but either way, when you wash the hair, the body ends up getting it. And whenever you go back to do the underarms, it flows into the butt crack. And, we might grab different things come up. We might notice that, oh, there's a marker that we have on our arm. And even though I've scrubbed, it's still there. Why is it still there? So you might grab a different product. Those are all of our coping mechanisms as we go through the healing journey and our showering experience. And even still, after scrubbing some of those, mechanic grease stains off, they're still going to be there when we get out. But the person that you were when you went into that shower is not the same person you are when you step out. You're cleaner, you're refined, you're aware, you feel better. You feel like you can face the day. And sometimes that soap might get in your eyes while you're in the shower, or you might find, oh my goodness, I forgot my washcloth, or I forgot this or that, but you roll with it. And healing is a step forward and a step back and a step forward. And just like that shower, more soap, clean off the soap, more soap again, clean off the soap. Oh, now the conditioner, why won't this stuff get out of my hair? It's constant. And I really think if people would look at it like that, instead of feeling like they need to be a Corvette and go from 0 to 60 in a matter of straight line, it's not healing is not an Autobahn at all. It's more of a shower. It's more of a dance.
That was so eloquently and beautifully put, Katie. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you for being on this podcast. Thank you for staying up late past your bedtime to talk to me.
Yeah. I'm going to sleep good tonight.
Oh, hell yeah. That's great. I really appreciate you, Katie.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on here, and thank you for doing what you do. I mean, it's great that people can access you at any time of day. They just have to log on to a Discord or Spotify, on a YouTube. And because, therapists aren't always available at 3 a.m. in the morning when you're having that breakdown, but you are.
I am here, guys. Like, actually, I am here. If you would have talked to me, message me on the Discord, direct message me. I'm here. I'm available. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I am someone who's gone through it. And I'm not going to judge you. That's not really in me. The only judgment that I've ever noticed within myself is when I actually fully understand something and then I make a judgment, because that is what judging really should be. It's understanding everything and then making a decision based on that. And that's how I was raised.
Critiquing.
Yes, exactly. And that's like my whole job.
Yes.
I'm a teacher. So it's really amazing that I got to hear from you, and you have opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And honestly, I would really love to have you on another episode, because this was truly lovely and really insightful. Thank you so much, Katie.
I am feeling the love right now. Well, thank you. I would love to do another episode. Oh yes, I don't shut up. So you bet. I would love to talk some more with you.
All right.
And you've been a great host. So thank you. Definitely.
If you're watching us over on YouTube, here are our memes of the week, carefully curated by those amazing people over on our Discord server. Let's get into those memes. At the end of every episode, we like to spin our wheel of emotions to learn a new feeling and how it correlates to trauma. So let's spin this wheel. All right, let's zoom in. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth. Okay. Okay. It landed in the happy category. Within the happy category, it is optimistic, inspired, and open. So optimistic, inspired, open. Okay. We don't usually get happy emotions when we spin our wheel, so I am very excited about this one. So when we're going through trauma, it's very hard to feel the positive aspects of the emotions. Either you feel them too little, or you feel them so much that it becomes mania. And speaking as someone who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and has more of the manic episodes, which are not all positive emotions, mind you, feeling happiness now as a healed person can be a little troubling, which is weird, right? Sometimes when you've gone through pretty intense trauma, you are so comfortable with the negativity, with the fear, with the constant turmoil, that when you start to move forward towards healing, it can be a little confusing whenever we're starting to feel those healed emotions. And I recognize that a lot. I went through pretty intense trauma from, the ages of, I would say, like 3 onwards. And then the worst years of my life were 2020, 2021. Those were by far the worst years of my life. But now it is 2024. And I'm starting to notice, as I'm slowly healing myself and hopefully helping you guys heal yourselves, joy and optimism, feeling happy for the future. I'm getting it a lot more and more. And I don't know, it's really, really strange because I have a lot of hesitancy to be open with others because, I've been burned before. I'm sure you can relate that you've been burned so many times, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And I also have noticed a lot of people that are not on this growth journey with me who don't necessarily want to get better are starting to leave me because either they feel convicted about me getting better and starting to move forward towards healing, and they still want to grieve or be resentful or be bitter. And speaking as someone who is healing and who is losing a lot of people because I am healing, I just want to remind you, if you're going through something similar, you're not doing anything wrong. Okay? Sometimes when we are healing, we will lose people. It's honestly inevitable. It's not sometimes. You will lose people. But it's not really a loss. And speaking as someone who is starting to feel more and more optimistic about my future and about the future that I'm helping you guys create, the only way for you to actually start healing is to recognize that you deserve better. That you deserve to feel joy. You deserve to be optimistic about the future. You deserve to move forward in your life. And you deserve to love who you are, where you are, and what you are doing. You deserve all those things. That is how we can heal. Is starting to love ourselves, starting to show up for ourselves, and starting to show up for others. The only way for us to be open and inspired by the world is to be open and inspired by ourselves, celebrating our little victories. And it's not prideful. And it's not humble either. It's the perfect middle. And I have finally found my middle. And honestly, it's thanks to you guys. It's thanks to the amazing people on our Discord server sharing and opening up to me and letting me open up to them. It's thanks to all the amazing people that I've met at the dog park, that I've met at vendor events, that I've met in real life who care about me, who want to know me. It's thanks to you guys. And because of you guys, I am so optimistic about my future. I am so beyond grateful to be alive. for the first time in my life, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be here. And that's a great feeling. It really is. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you'd like to support our podcast, we have a Patreon. Different tiers can get you a bracelet like the ones on my wrist, or you can get a sticker like the one on the back of my computer. We also have a bonfire where you can get custom apparel designed by yours truly, and all of those links are in the description. Thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast. A free way to support our podcast is liking the episode if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rating the show, subscribing to us over on YouTube, and sharing the show with your friends. We also have an Instagram. It's Trauma Dump Pod. If you'd like to get some little inspos throughout your week, pop up on your feed, please follow us over on our Instagram. It is at Trauma Dump Pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life in spite of your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise again from the ashes and be filled with peace, hope, love, joy, and understanding. I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.